Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. In a time and place where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blurred into the very fabric of reality, there existed a railway line spoken of only in hushed tones and half-forgotten lore. Locals in the sleepy town of Ashwick recalled with both awe and sorrow the legend of a ghostly train, the Midnight Express, that once it left the station, never reached its destination. Its whistle, low and mournful, was said to echo through the night like a lament for lost souls, calling them toward an eternal journey. The train's cars were rumored to be filled with travelers who, whether by fate or choice, were condemned to wander the endless tracks, forever suspended between departure and arrival. No matter how many miles it traveled, the Midnight Express never reached a terminus. It was as if the very idea of an ending was an illusion, and its path was an endless loop of mystery and melancholy. Arthur Gray had always felt that life was meant for more than the routine and the predictable. As a child growing up in Ashwick, he had been mesmerized by the stories his grandfather told of spectral trains and roads that led nowhere. Now, in his early 30s, and with a heart burdened by regret and unanswered questions, Arthur received a letter written in an elegant, almost otherworldly script. The letter, unsigned yet imbued with a sense of destiny, invited him to board the Midnight Express at the old Ashwick station on the eve of the next full moon. Come, it read, and leave behind what you know. Embrace the journey where time loses meaning, and every mile is a step toward your truth. The message stirred something deep within Arthur, a blend of hope and apprehension. With little more than a small duffel bag and the weight of unspoken dreams, he set out to find the station, determined to confront the legend that had haunted his family for generations. Ashwick Station was a relic of a bygone era, a crumbling building of weathered stone and ornate ironwork, long since abandoned by modern railroads. As Arthur arrived, the station was shrouded in an eerie twilight, the sky a tapestry of deep purples and indigo. A solitary lamppost flickered weakly, casting elongated shadows that danced on the platform. There was no bustle of passengers, no clatter of wheels on tracks, only the soft whisper of the wind and the distant murmur of an unseen current. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, Arthur stepped onto the platform, and then, as if summoned by his very presence, the sound of a locomotive's distant whistle filled the air, a sound that seemed to carry both a promise and a warning. Before his eyes, the Midnight Express materialized from the darkness like a phantom of iron and steam. Its engine glowed with an ethereal light, and its carriages, lined with faded velvet seats and flickering gas lights, exuded an inexplicable pull. With trembling anticipation, Arthur boarded the train. The doors closed behind him with a sigh, and as the carriage began to move, he felt a curious mixture of liberation and dread. There was no conductor to greet him, no schedule or destination posted on the walls, only the rhythmic chug of the engine and the ceaseless motion of the train that promised to carry him into the unknown. The train glided along tracks that seemed to stretch into infinity. Outside, the world transformed into a blur of darkened fields and ghostly silhouettes. Arthur gazed through the small, smudged window and saw not the familiar landscape of Ashwick, but a shifting panorama of twilight and shadow. The moon hung low and bright, illuminating the tracks with a silver glow that made every mile seem both timeless and transient. After what felt like an eternity suspended between departure and arrival, the train gradually slowed. With a soft lurch, it came to a stop at a station that was not on any map. A lonely, dilapidated platform overgrown with wild ivy, enshrouded in mist. As Arthur stepped off the train, he felt as if he had entered another realm. The station was silent, its only sound the distant rustling of leaves and the echo of his own footsteps. There was no sign of life, yet the atmosphere pulsed with an almost tangible sadness, a memory of journeys long past. Determined to understand the mystery, Arthur wandered along the abandoned platform. He discovered an old sign, its letters faded and barely legible. "Welcome to Nocturne." He wondered if this was the intended destination of the Midnight Express, or merely another illusion on a journey with no end. As Arthur explored the eerie station, a figure emerged from the fog, clad in a threadbare conductor's uniform that seemed to belong to another era. The man moved with a measured, deliberate grace. His eyes were kind, yet filled with a melancholy that hinted at countless untold stories. "Welcome aboard," the conductor said in a voice that resonated with the sound of distant bells. "I am Mr. Allister, the keeper of this endless journey. You have boarded the Midnight Express, a train that travels not toward a destination, but through the corridors of memory and the landscape of the soul." Arthur, though taken aback by the spectral presence, felt an inexplicable trust toward the enigmatic conductor. "Where does it take me?" he asked, his voice trembling. Mr. Allister smiled sadly. "That, my dear friend, is for you to discover. Each passenger on this train is given a journey tailored to the deepest yearnings of their heart. The train does not choose its destination. Only you can choose what you seek, and in the pursuit, you may find your truth." With that cryptic message lingering in the air, Mr. Allister ushered Arthur back aboard. The doors closed and the train resumed its silent voyage, the track winding further into the unknown. Within the moving carriages, Arthur found himself surrounded by a motley crew of passengers, each seemingly lost in thought. There was a young woman with eyes like storm clouds, a retired sailor whose weathered face told tales of endless seas, and a silent figure draped in a cloak, whose presence was both comforting and ominous. Conversation was sparse. Each passenger seemed to be deep in contemplation, as if the journey itself demanded introspection. As the train rumbled onward, the world outside morphed into a surreal mosaic. The tracks twisted and turned through landscapes that defied conventional geography. Dense forests where the trees whispered in forgotten tongues, desolate plains bathed in perpetual dusk, and towering mountains that disappeared into swirling mists. The boundaries between time and space blurred, and with every mile, Arthur felt as though he were not merely traveling, but traversing through layers of memory and possibility. He began to wonder if the train's endless journey was a metaphor for life itself, a continuous voyage where the destination was not a fixed point, but the sum of every experience, every heartbreak, and every moment of fleeting joy. In that labyrinth of tracks, the Midnight Express carried its passengers through the winding corridors of fate, each one guided by the secret longing of their own souls. One evening, as the train slowed to a gentle crawl through a valley bathed in the light of a half-hidden moon, Arthur found himself drawn to a small compartment at the end of a carriage. There in solitude, he took out his journal and began to write. As he scribbled down his thoughts, the soft hum of the engine and the rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the rails seemed to merge into a quiet, persistent melody, a lullaby of forgotten dreams. In that intimate moment, he recalled fragments of his past, the warmth of his mother's smile, the bittersweet laughter of childhood friends, and the quiet promise of first love. Each memory was both tender and painful, a mosaic of moments that had defined him, yet now lay hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. The train's endless journey mirrored his own inner voyage, a quest to reconcile the past with the present, to find meaning in the seemingly endless passage of time. As the night deepened, Arthur's pen flowed freely, capturing the interplay of light and shadow within his heart. He wrote of the mysteries of the Midnight Express, of the spectral conductor who seemed to guide them all, and of the endless tracks that whispered secrets of both despair and hope. With every word, he felt the weight of his solitude lift, replaced by a sense of connection to the vast, eternal tapestry of life. Days melted into weeks, and the journey aboard the Midnight Express became a transformative pilgrimage for Arthur. The train passed through landscapes that evoked both nostalgia and wonder, each station an ephemeral glimpse into a realm where time folded in upon itself. At one stop, the train lingered by a river that glowed with the reflections of a forgotten era. At another, it paused at a deserted platform where ghostly figures seemed to be engaged in silent conversation. During one such pause, Arthur met a fellow traveler, a quiet, contemplative woman named Evelyn. Her eyes, filled with both sorrow and unspoken joy, seemed to hold the same yearning that echoed within him. Over hushed conversations and shared silences, they discovered that their stories, though different in many ways, resonated with the same themes of loss, hope, and the unending quest for meaning. Evelyn spoke of her own journey, of moments when the world outside had blurred into a tapestry of memory and longing, when the train had carried her to the edge of her own existence, only to leave her with questions that could never be answered. In her soft, reflective tone, she described the Midnight Express as a sacred vessel, a bridge that connected the inner landscapes of the soul with the outer world of dreams and despair. Their bond deepened with each passing mile, and together they shared fragments of their past, mended old wounds, and dared to dream of a future where the journey itself was as important as any destination. In the gentle glow of a half-remembered sunset seen through the train's dusty window, they vowed to help each other find solace in the endless voyage, even if the train never reached a final stop. As the journey continued, the enigmatic nature of the train began to reveal itself further. In whispered conversations with other passengers, Arthur learned of the Midnight Express's uncanny ability to traverse not just physical landscapes, but the realms of emotion and memory. Some claimed that the train could sense the deepest desires of its passengers, guiding them through a labyrinth of experiences tailored to the essence of their souls. Others spoke of miraculous moments, of hearts mended by the gentle rhythm of the rails, of tears shed in catharsis, and of revelations that emerged in the quiet intervals between stations. One stormy night, as lightning danced across a turbulent sky and the rain pounded the roof of his compartment, Arthur experienced a vision unlike any other. The train slowed to a stop on a desolate, windswept plain. In that silent moment, the doors slid open, revealing not a station, but a vast, star-lit landscape where time and space seemed to dissolve into pure emotion. Arthur stepped out, his heart pounding, and felt an overwhelming rush of memories, each one a whisper of love lost, of joy fleeting, and of the indomitable spirit of those who dared to live fully in the face of endless uncertainty. It was as though the train had taken him to the very edge of existence, where every heartbeat echoed with the promise of eternal renewal. In the midst of this surreal voyage, a turning point emerged. Arthur and Evelyn, along with several other kindred souls, were faced with a profound choice. The Midnight Express, with its endless tracks and ever-changing landscapes, offered no true destination, a reality that mirrored the infinite journey of the human spirit. They could continue to ride the train indefinitely, wandering through the labyrinth of memories and dreams, or they could seek a place where the journey would end, where the relentless pursuit of meaning would give way to the quiet simplicity of a life grounded in reality. The decision was fraught with both hope and despair. For Arthur, the allure of the endless journey was both intoxicating and terrifying. He had come to see the train as a metaphor for life itself, a series of moments, each fleeting yet eternal, each infused with both beauty and melancholy. But the question loomed: was the endless voyage a blessing, offering infinite possibility, or a curse that prevented him from ever truly arriving? After many long nights of soul-searching and shared conversations under the soft glow of midnight stars, Arthur and Evelyn reached a quiet consensus. They chose not to abandon the journey, but to redefine it. They resolved that the true destination was not a physical place, but a state of being, a delicate balance between embracing the endless mystery of the journey and cherishing the moments of connection that illuminated the way. Their decision, though not a final answer, was a promise to live fully in each fleeting moment and to find beauty in the endless dance of time. Years passed aboard the Midnight Express, and Arthur's life transformed into a mosaic of experiences, each moment a brushstroke in the vast painting of his existence. He became a chronicler of the train's enigmatic voyage, writing down the stories of the passengers, the strange stops, and the ever-shifting landscapes that the train traversed. His journal, filled with vivid descriptions, poignant reflections, and the quiet wisdom of a man who had seen both the depths of despair and the heights of hope, became a treasured testament to the power of the journey. The train itself continued to glide along the endless tracks, a spectral vessel moving between worlds, its destination an ever-elusive promise. Arthur's writings inspired many, a generation of dreamers, philosophers, and wanderers who saw in the Midnight Express the eternal quest for meaning and connection. His memoir, The Endless Horizon, was published to critical acclaim, resonating with readers who found solace in the idea that life, in all its unpredictability, was a journey without a final destination. In the twilight of his life, Arthur Gray often returned to the old station at Ashwick, the place where it all began. The platform, weathered by time and memory, stood as a silent witness to the endless passage of the Midnight Express. Although the train had long since departed, its legacy lingered in every rusted rail, every whisper of wind that swept across the tracks. On quiet, reflective evenings, Arthur would sit on the weathered bench at the station, his eyes following the horizon where the rails disappeared into the distance. In an attic filled with memories and dust, amidst faded letters and yellowed pages, there lay an old mysterious photograph that defied all reason. It was said among the family that this portrait was no ordinary relic. Passed down from an ancestor whose name was lost to time, the photograph was rumored to change its image depending on who gazed upon it. Some claimed it revealed their deepest secrets, while others swore it showed visions of possible futures or long-forgotten pasts. As the years went by, the photograph became both a cherished heirloom and a haunting enigma, a portrait of possibilities that blurred the boundaries between truth and illusion. Isabella Munro had grown up listening to whispered family legends of strange artifacts and magical heirlooms. When she returned to her ancestral home after her grandmother's passing, she spent long hours sifting through the attic, seeking solace among memories. It was there, in a battered trunk hidden beneath a faded quilt, that she discovered a small, leather-bound box. Inside lay a single aged photograph in a delicate silver frame. The image was peculiar, a scene of a sunlit garden, but nothing seemed quite right. The colors were soft and the figures hazy, yet as Isabella studied it, she felt a stirring deep within her soul. Curiosity compelled her to bring the photograph down to her study. That very night, as she sat by the lamplight, she noticed something extraordinary. When she looked at the picture, she saw not only the garden but a subtle change. The flower beds, the path, even the faces of the people who once strolled there, seemed to shift ever so slightly. Was it the play of light on old paper, or was it something more, an enchantment woven into the fabric of the image itself? Isabella resolved to discover the truth behind the uncanny portrait. With her journal in hand, she began to record every detail of the photograph, determined to understand how its mysterious nature might be connected to her own life and the long-kept secrets of her family. The next morning, as pale light seeped through her study window, Isabella invited her closest friend Daniel over to share her discovery. Together, they examined the photograph. To Isabella's astonishment, Daniel's eyes fixated on a part of the picture that she hadn't noticed, a hidden figure peering from behind a blossoming tree. When Daniel mentioned it, Isabella frowned. "I don't see anyone there," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Daniel insisted, "I swear there's a man in the background, a man whose eyes seem to follow you." Over the next few days, they observed the photograph at different times of the day, under various lights. When Isabella looked, she saw the garden in soft daylight, with gentle hues of summer. But when Daniel gazed, the scene subtly changed. The sky darkened, the shadows grew longer, and the hidden figure became more distinct. Later that week, a third friend, Marianne, was invited. Marianne's interpretation was entirely different. She saw a lush, overgrown garden in full bloom, with vibrant colors and a fountain that glistened as if with fresh water. Each person, it seemed, perceived a different version of the same scene. Isabella began to suspect that the photograph was far more than a simple image. It was as though it held within it a secret realm, one that shifted and transformed depending on the viewer's heart, memories, and perhaps even their desires. Haunted by the phenomenon, Isabella sought out her mother's old diaries, hoping to find a clue to the photograph's origins. In the brittle, handwritten pages of an entry dated many decades ago, she found a passage that spoke of an ancestral portrait enchanted by a mysterious relative known only as the seer. This ancestor, it was written, had possessed a unique gift, the ability to capture not only the likeness of a moment, but the very essence of what lay beneath. The diary claimed that the portrait was imbued with magic that allowed it to change with the viewer's perspective, reflecting their innermost truths. As Isabella read further, she discovered that the family had long guarded the secret of the enchanted photograph. It was said that the portrait was intended as a gift for the heir who was ready to face the complexities of truth and illusion, a tool to help them navigate the labyrinth of their own identity. But the power of the photograph was both a blessing and a curse. Those who looked into it were sometimes confronted with painful memories or visions of a future they dreaded, while others saw glimpses of hope and possibility. Struck by the gravity of this revelation, Isabella realized that her own path might be intertwined with the photograph's magic. The shifting image seemed to beckon her to unlock not only the secrets of her ancestry, but also the hidden corridors of her own soul. Determined to explore the depth of its enchantment, Isabella organized an informal gathering at her family estate. Friends, relatives, and even local historians were invited to view the photograph under controlled conditions. Each person was asked to write down their impressions and emotions as they looked at the image. The responses were as varied as they were profound. One visitor saw a melancholic figure, a young woman lost in thought, while another perceived a vibrant celebration of life, with laughter echoing in the vibrant colors of a sunny garden. As the night wore on and the responses accumulated, a pattern began to emerge. The variations in the photographs seemed to correspond with the personal histories and emotional landscapes of the viewers. It was as if the image was a mirror, not merely reflecting light, but reflecting the heart. Some who carried deep regrets saw a shadowy, desolate version of the garden. Those with hopeful spirits saw a place of radiant beauty and renewal. The gathering sparked a lively debate, with some calling the phenomenon divine intervention, and others dismissing it as an elaborate trick of the mind. Yet for Isabella, the truth was undeniable. The photograph was alive with magic, its power deeply connected to the human soul, a key that unlocked the hidden recesses of memory and desire. Haunted by her own reflections in the image, Isabella decided to conduct a solitary experiment. One rainy evening, she took the photograph to a quiet room in the mansion, a room lined with mirrors and bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. There she sat before the picture, closed her eyes, and allowed herself to confront the emotions that had long been buried beneath years of caution. In that introspective solitude, she began to feel a subtle warmth emanating from the photograph. When she opened her eyes, the image had changed once more. Now, instead of a simple garden, she saw a vast, enchanted landscape. A secret grove filled with iridescent flowers, shimmering pools, and a sky awash with hues of twilight. In the distance, she discerned a solitary figure, a young man whose expression was one of bittersweet hope. For a moment, the figure's eyes met hers, and she felt a surge of connection, a momentary recognition that transcended time and memory. Overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience, Isabella felt as though the photograph had unlocked a hidden door within her, one that led to both wondrous possibilities and the painful truth of her own past. She realized that the magic of the image was not static. It was dynamic, evolving with every glance, every emotion, every heartbeat. In the wake of her solitary experiment, Isabella's curiosity grew into an all-consuming need to understand the true nature of the enchanted photograph. She delved deeper into family archives and scoured local libraries for any mention of the seer and the origin of the magical portrait. Her search led her to a dusty, leather-bound volume tucked away in a forgotten corner of the town's historical society. The book, written in an archaic script, detailed the life of an enigmatic ancestor known as Cassandra, reputed to have been a visionary and a mystic. According to the text, Cassandra had been blessed, or perhaps cursed, with the ability to see the hidden layers of reality. In a moment of transcendent clarity, she had painted a portrait that captured not just the physical form of her subjects, but their very essence, their dreams, their regrets, their innermost fears and desires. It was a work of art that defied conventional boundaries, a piece meant to serve as a guide for future generations in navigating the complexities of the human heart. Isabella's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sorrow as she read Cassandra's words. The enchanted photograph, it seemed, was a legacy, a tool passed down through the ages to help the family confront the truth of their existence. But it was also a burden, for the key to unlocking its magic lay in facing the most painful parts of one's soul. As word of the enchanted photograph spread, scholars, artists, and mystics from far and wide began to visit the Monroe estate. Among them was Adrian Collins, a renowned art restorer and critic known for his sensitivity to the emotional resonance of historical works. Adrian was captivated by the photograph and the stories that surrounded it. He proposed a collaborative exhibition, a gathering where viewers could share their experiences and interpretations of the image. In a grand hall of the estate, the photograph was displayed in a glass case under carefully controlled light. Visitors were encouraged to observe the portrait and then record their impressions in a series of notebooks provided by the family. Over the course of several weeks, hundreds of accounts were collected, each one a window into a different facet of the human experience. Some described the image as a vision of hope, others as a somber reminder of loss. A few even claimed that the photograph had revealed hidden faces, those of loved ones lost to time, of long-forgotten ancestors who watched over the living. This convergence of hearts and minds created a tapestry of shared emotion, and the exhibition became a local phenomenon. People came not only to marvel at the magic of the photograph, but also to connect with one another through their shared vulnerability. In quiet, reflective moments, the viewers began to understand that the picture was more than art. It was a mirror to the soul, a repository of collective memory that transcended generations. Yet, as with all things touched by magic, the enchanted photograph was not without its complications. The more it was studied and admired, the more its shifting images began to affect those who looked upon it. Some visitors found themselves haunted by the visions they saw, fleeting images of sorrowful faces and unfulfilled destinies that lingered in their minds long after they left the gallery. Others experienced unexpected bouts of melancholy, as if the weight of hidden memories had been lifted from the canvas and into their hearts. Isabella, observing these effects, felt a deep responsibility to ensure that the photograph's legacy was not one of endless torment, but of transformative healing. She organized a series of intimate gatherings in the mansion's garden, where small groups of visitors could discuss their experiences in a safe, supportive environment. Poets recited verses inspired by the portrait, while artists attempted to capture its elusive magic on canvas. Through these gatherings, the family learned that while the photograph could reveal painful truths, it also held the power to spark renewal, a reminder that beauty and sorrow were inextricably linked, and that every tear shed in grief could be the seed of new growth. One cool winter evening, after one such gathering, Isabella found herself alone in the estate's quiet drawing room, the enchanted photograph hanging on the wall like a silent sentinel. The room was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, and outside, the wind whispered through the bare branches of ancient trees. As she gazed at the image, the photograph shifted once more. This time, it revealed a scene so profoundly personal that Isabella felt her breath catch in her throat. In the image, she saw herself as a child, standing in the very garden of the estate, her eyes filled with wonder and innocence. But there was more, a glimpse of a shadowy figure, a presence that seemed to hover behind her, watching over her with gentle, sorrowful eyes. For a long moment, Isabella was overcome by the realization that the photograph was not merely an object of art, but a living link to her past, a bridge between who she had been and who she had become. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that the key to the photograph's magic lay in the acceptance of all that she was, the joy of her childhood, the pain of her losses, and the quiet strength of her growth. In that moment of clarity, the shifting images coalesced into a vision of harmony, a tapestry woven from the delicate threads of memory and hope. In the years that followed, the enchanted photograph continued to be a cherished heirloom, a source of both comfort and challenge for those who looked upon it. Isabella dedicated herself to preserving its legacy, compiling the myriad impressions and stories into a beautifully bound volume titled Reflections of the Soul. The book, filled with personal essays, sketches, and accounts from countless viewers, became a testament to the power of art to reveal the hidden layers of the human heart. The Monroe estate transformed into a cultural haven where scholars, artists, and seekers of truth gathered to celebrate the interplay between memory and imagination. Workshops were held, discussions were shared, and the community learned that the ever-changing nature of the photograph was a metaphor for life itself, a reminder that our perceptions are fluid, that every moment is layered with both past and future, and that our inner worlds are as vibrant and dynamic as the images that dance across the canvas. As time flowed on, the enchanted photograph remained a beacon of mystery and revelation. In the quiet twilight of autumn, when the air was crisp and the sky a tapestry of fading light, the people of Havenford would gather in the Monroe Estate's garden to share their stories and to listen to the gentle whisper of shifting images. New generations learned to see the photograph not just as an heirloom, but as a living dialogue between what is seen and what lies hidden within each soul. Isabella, now in the twilight of her life, would often sit by the window, gazing at the portrait as it changed subtly with each passing day. In its evolving images, she saw not only her own story, but the collective memory of a family, a community, and a world that was ever in flux. The photograph had taught them that truth is not fixed, that beauty can be found in both joy and sorrow, and that every heart holds within it the power to transform pain into art. Thus, the legend of the photograph that changes depending on who looks at it endures, a timeless narrative woven from the threads of memory, magic, and the infinite complexity of the human soul. For as long as there are eyes to see, hearts to feel, and dreams to guide us, The ever-shifting portrait will remind us that the truth of who we are is ever-changing, yet eternally beautiful. In every glance at that mystical photograph, there is a promise that each person's truth is unique, and in the dance of shifting images, the story of our lives is forever being rewritten, a story as boundless and profound as the human heart itself. In the shadowed recesses of an ancient valley, where time and memory intertwine with the land, there is a legend that has been passed down in hushed whispers for centuries. Locals speak of a mysterious fog, a dense, spectral mist that drifts silently over the moors and forests, a mist unlike any other. It is said that this fog, shrouded in ethereal light, has a terrible power. Those who breathe its cold, clammy air become trapped within it, as if their very souls were ensnared by a force beyond mortal understanding. No one has ever escaped its clutches once the mist has claimed them, and its victims are doomed to wander its endless labyrinth, lost between worlds. Some believe the fog is a curse born of ancient sorrow, a remnant of a long-forgotten tragedy. Others insist it is a manifestation of nature's hidden wrath, a reminder that some forces in the world are not meant to be tamed. Yet regardless of its origins, the fog has haunted the surrounding lands, its legend growing ever darker with each generation. In the small village of Brackenford, nestled at the edge of a sprawling wild moor, the mist was a familiar, if unwelcome, visitor. As a child, Mara Bellamy had listened with wide eyes to the tales her grandmother told by the flickering hearth, stories of an unearthly fog that descended at twilight, trapping unwary souls in a spectral prison from which there was no escape. At that time, the fog was seen as nothing more than a cautionary tale, a myth meant to instill a healthy respect for nature's unpredictable moods. But as Mara grew, she began to notice strange occurrences on cold, moonlit nights, a faint, unnatural chill in the air, an eerie silence that blanketed the village just before dawn. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones about people who had wandered too far into the moor on such nights and were never seen again. Although most dismissed these as accidents or the result of wandering off in the dark, a seed of unease took root in Mara's heart. The legend of the fog, once a distant bedtime story, now felt all too real. One November evening, when the wind howled with a mournful tone and the sky was a tapestry of swirling gray, Mara found herself standing at the edge of the moor. A thick, white mist was rolling in, far denser than she had ever seen. It moved with a deliberate, almost predatory grace, as if it were alive. The fog crept slowly over the fields, swallowing the outlines of trees and turning familiar landmarks into ghostly silhouettes. Mara could feel an inexplicable pull, a mixture of dread and curiosity that urged her forward. Ignoring the voice of caution in her mind, she stepped into the haze. With each cautious step, the world around her dissolved into a monochrome dreamscape. Sounds grew muffled, the air turned damp and cold, and the only sensation was a deep, creeping isolation. It was as if the fog were absorbing not just light, but life itself. Deep within the fog, Mara's vision blurred, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift in an unsteady dance. She began to notice a strange phenomenon. With every breath she took, the mist seemed to cling a little closer, wrapping around her like invisible tendrils. At first, she thought it might be the natural chill of the autumn night, but soon a creeping realization set in. She was being trapped. Panic surged through her as the fog thickened, and she found herself unable to retrace her steps. The familiar path back to the village had vanished into the spectral whiteness, leaving her alone in a shifting maze. Each breath she drew filled her lungs with the cold, moist air that was laced with a strange, lingering scent, a fragrance that hinted at decay, forgotten earth, and memories of a world long past. Desperation clawed at her heart as she tried to call out, but her voice was swallowed by the dense mist. In that moment, Mara understood the truth behind the legends. The fog did not merely obscure the landscape, it ensnared those who dared to breathe it, holding them captive in an endless, shifting purgatory where time itself seemed to stand still. As the hours passed, Mara wandered deeper into the heart of the fog. The landscape around her became surreal, a twilight world where the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred. Twisted trees loomed like silent guardians, their limbs reaching out as if to protect the secrets of the mist. Distant, indistinct shapes moved just at the edge of her vision, and she could hear the faint sound of rustling leaves that might have been footsteps. It was as though she had entered a labyrinth designed by the fog itself, with paths that shifted and merged into one another unpredictably. In her solitude, memories began to surface. Images of a childhood spent in the gentle embrace of nature, of laughter and light, now lost to the oppressive gloom. Every turn in the labyrinth evoked a sensation of déjà vu, as if the fog were not only trapping her physically, but also dredging up forgotten fragments of her past. The sorrow of long-forgotten joys and the ache of abandoned dreams mingled with the present, creating a tapestry of melancholic beauty that both comforted and tormented her. In the midst of her wandering, Mara stumbled upon a small clearing where the fog seemed to momentarily lift, revealing a scene from another time. The clearing was illuminated by a soft, ghostly light, and at its center stood an ancient stone, well covered in ivy. As she approached, the sound of her own breathing mingled with faint echoes, whispers that seemed to emanate from the well itself. Peering into the depths, Mara saw not her own reflection, but visions of people long gone, a mother cradling her child, a young couple entwined in a tender embrace, and an old man gazing wistfully at the horizon. These images were ephemeral, flickering like the remnants of a dream, yet they carried an undeniable sadness, as if the souls in the well were trapped in an eternal moment of longing. In that quiet, haunted space, Mara realized that the fog was more than a physical trap. It was a vessel for memories, a repository of the lives and emotions of those who had been consumed by its embrace. Haunted by the spectral visions and the inescapable grip of the fog, Mara felt the heavy burden of isolation press upon her. Every inhalation seemed to bind her closer to the mist, as if it were riding invisible chains around her heart. The solitude was absolute, a profound loneliness that echoed the very essence of the legends whispered in her village. In this state of suspended time, she grappled with the depths of her own melancholy, confronting fears and regrets that had long lain dormant within her soul. Tears flowed freely as she recalled the faces of loved ones lost to time, the moments of happiness that had faded into bittersweet recollections. Yet even in the midst of despair, there was a glimmer of understanding, a realization that her suffering was not unique, but part of a vast, shared human experience. The fog, in its mysterious cruelty, was both a captor and a mirror, reflecting back to her the universal ache of loneliness and the enduring hope that one might someday find escape. In the depths of the labyrinthine mist, just when hope seemed to have been extinguished, Mara noticed a subtle shift. A faint, warm light appeared in the distance, pulsing gently like the heartbeat of a hidden sanctuary. With a renewed surge of determination, she began to follow the light, her steps growing more resolute as she moved through the ever-shifting corridors of the fog. The light led her to a small, secluded grove where the mist was noticeably thinner, a haven amid the oppressive gloom. Here the air was infused with the scent of wild lavender and freshly turned earth, a stark contrast to the musty decay of the surrounding fog. In the center of the grove, a solitary oak tree stood proud, its ancient branches spread wide as if offering protection. Beneath its boughs, a simple wooden bench beckoned, and on that bench lay a small, intricately carved pendant in the shape of a dove. As Mara approached, The pendant seemed to glow with a soft inner radiance. She felt an inexplicable warmth, as if the object contained the essence of hope itself. In that moment, she realized that the pendant might be a token, a remnant left by someone who had once fought against the consuming fog and emerged free. Clutching it tightly, Mara felt a surge of strength, a promise that not all was lost. The pendant, a symbol of freedom and renewal, became her guiding light, a talisman against the oppressive weight of the mist. Empowered by the glimmer of hope, Mara pressed on through the labyrinth of fog with a newfound resolve. The journey was arduous and fraught with moments of despair. The fog, as if aware of her determination, thickened as if to thwart her progress. Every breath became a battle, each inhalation of the cold, clinging mist a reminder of the trap that it had set. Yet the pendant's warmth steadied her, guiding her steps and whispering of a future beyond the endless gray. At times she encountered others lost in the fog, souls adrift, wandering aimlessly with vacant eyes, caught in the same relentless snare. Mara reached out to them when she could, offering words of encouragement and the solace of her pendant's gentle glow. In these rare moments of connection, she discovered that the fog did not discriminate. It ensnared all who breathed its tainted air, trapping them in a timeless purgatory of forgotten dreams and unspoken regrets. One such encounter was with a middle-aged man named Thomas, whose gaunt face and haunted eyes spoke of years spent in silent despair. Thomas had been wandering the moors for so long that he no longer remembered his own name. Mara's compassion and the promise of the pendant rekindled a spark of memory within him. Together they formed a fragile alliance, sharing their stories and pooling their strength as they navigated the treacherous paths of the fog. As the days melded into one another in that timeless, oppressive haze, Mara began to notice subtle changes in the fog itself. The relentless gray began to give way to wisps of color, fleeting traces of blue and green, like the first hints of dawn breaking through a long, dark night. With each step, the mist grew thinner, and the oppressive weight on her lungs seemed to lift ever so slightly. One crisp morning, as she and Thomas reached the edge of a vast open plain, the fog receded dramatically, unveiling a breathtaking landscape bathed in soft, golden light. The air was crisp and clear, filled with the gentle scent of new beginnings. In that moment of revelation, Mara understood that the fog was not an eternal prison, but a transient barrier, a test of will and resilience that could be overcome by those who held fast to hope. The pendant, now glowing more brightly than ever, pulsed with an energy that seemed to resonate with the very heart of the new day. Mara felt a deep, abiding connection to the land and its people, a sense that the struggle against the fog was a shared journey, one that bound all souls in the quest for freedom and renewal. With the fog's hold broken and the open plain stretching before them, Mara and Thomas emerged from the mist as survivors of a silent, suffocating world. The journey back to the village of Alderbrook was arduous, yet every step felt lighter, imbued with the promise of the world restored to its natural order. Upon their return, the villagers greeted them with cautious hope. News of the vanishing fog spread quickly, and many came to witness the miraculous transformation, the first breath of fresh, untainted air after what had seemed like an eternity trapped in a world of gray. The elders who had long warned of the fog's insidious power now marveled at its retreat, whispering of ancient prophecies and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Mara's story, recorded meticulously in her journal and shared with the community, became a source of inspiration and healing. The pendant she carried was enshrined as a symbol of hope, a tangible reminder that even when faced with the darkest of mists, the light of resilience could prevail. Together, the villagers began to rebuild, celebrating each sunrise as a victory over the forces of despair. Years later, the legend of the fog that trapped those who breathed it had become part of the collective memory of Alderbrook. Statues and murals depicted scenes of the mystical mist and the brave souls who had fought to escape its clutches. Children grew up hearing the tale of Mara and Thomas, the wanderers who had faced the consuming fog and emerged into the light, and learned that every challenge, no matter how overwhelming, could be overcome with courage and hope. Mara's journals were passed down as treasured heirlooms, a legacy of resilience and the transformative power of hope. On clear, crisp mornings, when the sun shone brightly and the air was filled with the scent of wildflowers, the villagers would gather at the edge of the moor to commemorate the day the fog had lifted, a day when the world had been reborn from the ashes of despair. And though the fog would occasionally return in fleeting wisps, a reminder of the fragility of hope and the ever-present nature of memory, it was no longer a prison, but a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. For in the struggle against the mist, the people of Alderbrook had discovered that every breath of fresh air was a victory, and every moment of light a promise that even the darkest night could give way to a new dawn. Thus the tale of the fog that traps those who breathe it lives on, a timeless saga of isolation, resilience, and the eternal quest for freedom. For as long as the winds blow and the mists rise over the ancient moors, the memory of that treacherous fog will echo in every heart that dares to dream of light beyond the darkness. In a forgotten hamlet nestled among rolling hills and barren moors, where twilight lingered like a wistful sigh and the night sang of solitude, a legend persisted through generations. The story spoke of a mysterious bell that hung high in a crumbling stone tower on the edge of town. A bell that, it was said, tolled only for the lonely. Its deep, sonorous peal was not heralded by a clock's routine, but by an inexplicable, aching need. When its toll resounded, it reached the hearts of those adrift in isolation, calling out to souls burdened by loss and yearning for connection. Some believed the bell was a divine messenger, a melancholic herald of destiny, while others whispered that it was cursed to echo the eternal sorrow of a people long forgotten. Its mournful sound became a symbol, a reminder that loneliness, though painful, was a thread woven into the tapestry of human existence. Oliver Gray had known loneliness since childhood. Growing up as the only child of a weary widower in the windswept village of Larkspur, he found solace in quiet routines and the rustle of pages in the village library. Yet despite the comfort of familiar faces and daily rituals, an ineffable emptiness gnawed at him. A sense that something was missing, a voice yearning to be heard in the silent corridors of his heart. On a cool autumn evening, as a harvest moon hung low and luminous in the sky, Oliver sat by his window, his eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of the old bell tower that had stood abandoned for decades. A memory stirred in him, a faint recollection of a tale his grandmother once told, that on nights when the world felt unbearably lonely, the bell would toll, echoing across the moor as if summoning the lost and the heartbroken. As the wind sighed through the barren trees, a solitary distant peal broke the silence, a sound so rich with melancholy that it seemed to resonate with the very core of his soul. Unable to shake the pull of that forlorn toll, Oliver decided that he must seek out the source of the sound. Gathering his worn notebook, a small lantern, and a heart full of hope and trepidation, he stepped out into the night. The village lay silent, cloaked in the gentle darkness of a world at rest, but the path before him, lit by the silver glow of moonlight, seemed to beckon him onward, towards the ancient tower and the promise of understanding his own loneliness. The path that led from Larkspur to the old bell tower wound through desolate fields and past ancient stone walls covered in creeping ivy. As Oliver walked, the landscape unfurled before him like a sepia-toned memory. The crisp air carried with it the scent of damp earth and distant rain, a fragrance that seemed to evoke forgotten moments of joy and sorrow intertwined. With each step, His mind conjured images of lost souls wandering in search of solace, each as solitary as he felt. He recalled the whispered lore. The tower had once belonged to a reclusive poet whose life had been a tapestry of unspoken grief and fervent hope. It was said that the poet had crafted the bell from melted bronze in his own tearful lament, imbuing it with the power to call out to those burdened by isolation. Oliver's heart swelled with both anticipation and fear as he approached the looming structure. The tower, half swallowed by time and nature, stood like a monument to lost dreams against the indigo sky. Oliver pushed open a creaking iron gate that led to a narrow, overgrown path. With each careful step, the weight of history pressed upon him. Tall, gnarled trees formed a natural archway overhead, their twisted branches whispering secrets in the wind. In the dim light, the old stone tower emerged from the darkness like a ghost of the past. Its walls were worn and weathered, the surface etched with cryptic symbols that time had almost erased. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of damp stone and memories. Oliver ascended a spiral staircase, each step echoing through the silent chamber, as if summoning voices long muted. At the top of the tower, he found the ancient bell suspended in a rusted frame, its surface darkened by age yet still exuding an aura of somber majesty. As he approached, the bell began to vibrate ever so slightly, as if stirred by the presence of a kindred spirit. Oliver reached out, his hand trembling with anticipation, and gently touched the cool metal. At that very moment, the bell tolled, a single, deep peal that resonated like a cry from the depths of a lonely heart. The sound of the bell was unlike anything Oliver had ever heard. It was as though each toll carried with it the weight of innumerable sorrows, echoing the heartbreak of countless souls who had wandered this earth alone. In that singular moment, as the sound reverberated through the ancient stones and out into the silent night, Oliver felt a surge of emotions, a mixture of melancholy, longing, and a strange, inexplicable hope. He closed his eyes and listened intently, as if trying to decipher the message hidden within the tolling. The sound was not merely a random chime, it was a language, a mournful soliloquy that spoke of loss and isolation, but also of the possibility of connection. In the sound, he heard the echo of his own solitude, the silent cry of a heart that had yearned for understanding. And in that echo, he sensed a promise that perhaps by confronting his own loneliness, he could begin to heal the wounds that had long festered within him. In the days that followed his encounter with the bell, Oliver became consumed by the mystery of its tolling. He spent long hours in the tower, recording the sound in his journal and capturing every nuance of its melancholic resonance with his old tape recorder. His nights were filled with dreams of the poet who had forged the bell, visions of a man with sorrowful eyes, whose solitary existence had been spent pouring his grief into art. Oliver scoured local archives, interviewing the few elderly villagers who remembered the old tales of the poet and the legend of the bell that tolled for the lonely. One such villager, a woman named Margaret, who had once been a companion to the poet, recalled in hushed, trembling tones how the bell had always signaled a turning point in her life. "When you hear its toll," she whispered, "you are reminded that you are not alone in your sorrow. It calls out to those whose hearts are heavy, binding us all in the shared language of loss." Her words resonated deeply within Oliver, reinforcing his belief that the bell was a beacon, a sorrowful guide meant to bring the lonely together, even if only through the shared experience of its tolling. Driven by both curiosity and the need for healing, Oliver began to seek companionship among others who might have felt the call of the bell. He discovered that he was not alone in his isolation. Many of the villagers carried quiet burdens and unspoken sorrows. In late-night gatherings by the flickering light of communal fires, he listened to tales of lost love, of dreams deferred, and of the haunting sound that had once comforted and tormented them all. Among these kindred spirits was a gentle woman named Lillian, whose eyes shone with the wisdom of hard-fought experience. Lillian, too, had been touched by the bell's call in her youth, and over time, the sound had become a balm for her aching heart. In her soft, measured voice, she recounted how, on particularly lonely nights, she would climb to the tower's summit to listen to the tolling, letting its sorrowful melody wash over her like a cleansing tide. With every peal, she felt a connection, a subtle reminder that even in solitude, one was part of a greater tapestry of shared human experience. Together, Oliver and Lillian began to meet regularly at the tower. They would sit in silence, letting the bell's melancholic toll echo through the night and share their memories and hopes. In these moments of quiet communion, a fragile bond was forged, a testament to the power of shared sorrow and the potential for healing even in the darkest of hours. As autumn deepened into the long, somber days of winter, Oliver and Lillian, along with a small circle of villagers, organized a solemn ceremony in honor of the bell's legacy. They gathered at the base of the tower on the coldest night of the year, each carrying a token of their deepest loss: a faded photograph, a cherished memento, a handwritten letter. Under the pale light of the full moon, they lit candles and formed a circle around the ancient tower. At the stroke of midnight, as the wind howled softly and the world was cloaked in a brittle, eerie quiet, they each took a moment to listen to the bell. Its toll, now familiar and yet always deeply moving, resonated across the gathering like a shared heartbeat, a reminder that no soul was ever truly alone. One by one, they recited fragments of poems and memories dedicated to those they had lost. The air was thick with a potent mix of grief and hope, as if every tear shed was a seed from which new life might eventually sprout. The ceremony, known thereafter as the Ritual of Remembrance, became an annual tradition, a bittersweet celebration of sorrow and solidarity that brought the villagers together in the unyielding face of loneliness. In the years that followed, the legend of the bell that tolled only for the lonely evolved into something greater than a mere curse or a symbol of isolation. Oliver, with Lillian's gentle guidance and the support of the community, began to see the bell's toll as a call to embrace the full spectrum of human emotion. Its sorrowful peals were not solely harbingers of despair. They were also reminders of the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for hope amid loss. Inspired by this newfound understanding, Oliver took to writing a series of essays, poems, and a long, introspective memoir that captured the journey of healing through shared melancholy. His words, filled with delicate observations of light and shadow, sorrow and solace, resonated with readers far beyond the borders of his small village. His memoir, later published under the title The Lonely Toll, became a quiet bestseller, a testament to the idea that even in the depths of isolation, one could find a connection to something greater, a shared rhythm that bound all hearts together. One crisp spring morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the misty moors and the sound of the bell faded into the gentle murmur of a new day, Oliver stood at the foot of the tower with a profound sense of renewal. The villagers, too, had begun to transform. No longer were the tolling peals solely a reminder of despair. They had come to embody the delicate balance between sorrow and hope. The ritual of remembrance continued to draw people together, but now it was infused with a quiet joy, a celebration of the resilience found in shared vulnerability. Under Oliver's mentorship, the community established a small cultural center near the tower, where artists, musicians, and storytellers gathered to honor the memory of the lost and to express the complex beauty of human emotion. The bell's toll, once feared as an omen of doom, now served as an enduring symbol of renewal, a beacon that lit the path from isolation to connection, from sorrow to a tentative, uplifting hope. Decades passed, and Oliver's life, like the toll of the ancient bell, continued to echo with the interplay of joy and melancholy. The tower became a cherished landmark, a living monument to the power of shared memory and the enduring bonds forged in the crucible of loneliness. Children grew up hearing the legend of the bell that tolled only for the lonely, and many found solace in the idea that even the most isolated souls were never truly alone. Oliver, now an elder with a gentle smile and eyes that held the wisdom of countless tolls, continued to visit the tower each full moon. He would sit quietly in the soft glow of candlelight, listening to the bell's deep, resonant sound, and reflecting on the bittersweet tapestry of his life. His memoir, The Lonely Toll, remained a guiding light for those seeking to understand that sorrow and hope were two sides of the same coin. A reminder that every toll, no matter how mournful, carried within it the promise of connection and the possibility of healing. In the quiet twilight of the village, as the wind whispered softly through the trees and the night embraced the land in its gentle arms, the legend of the bell endured. The sound of its toll, always heard by those who felt the weight of isolation, served as a timeless reminder that loneliness was not an endless void, but a shared experience, a common thread woven through the hearts of all who have loved and lost. The villagers of Larkspur would gather on cool, starlit nights, closing their eyes to listen to that deep, resonant peal, and in that moment, they felt the invisible ties that bound them together. For in the haunting melody of the bell, every lonely soul found a whisper of understanding, a quiet promise that they were never truly alone. Thus, the story of the bell that tolls only for the lonely lives on, a legend of light and shadow, of sorrow and hope, echoing through time as a beacon for all who dare to listen to the music of the heart. In the remote valley of Ravencroft, where fog clings to ancient stone walls and twilight lingers long after the sun has bid farewell, there exists a peculiar phenomenon that has been whispered about for generations. Locals say that in the small weathered town of Dustford, every shadow stretches far beyond what nature would normally allow. A spectral length that seems to defy the laws of physics. These elongated shadows are more than mere optical tricks. They are said to carry secrets, memories, and even the weight of souls. Some believe they are remnants of forgotten grief, while others claim they are harbingers of long-lost tragedies. In hushed conversations by flickering candlelight, elders recount how, on certain days when the air is heavy with impending change, the shadows grow impossibly long, as if reaching out to reclaim something lost to time. Gabriel Reyes arrived in Dustford on a cold, misty morning, his breath visible in the pale light as he stepped off the old bus onto a street lined with weather-beaten buildings. He was a freelance journalist and photographer, drawn by the rumor of a town where shadows were said to defy natural laws. Gabriel had spent countless hours in city libraries researching local folklore, and the tantalizing whispers of Dustford's unusual phenomenon had captivated his imagination. As he wandered the main street, he noticed immediately that something was off. The shadows cast by street lamps, trees, and even passers-by seemed unnaturally long, stretched out like dark fingers reaching for unseen secrets. The air carried an otherworldly stillness, and the residents, wrapped in worn coats and quiet smiles, offered only vague nods and cautious glances when asked about the long shadows. Gabriel felt both excited and unnerved. In his journal he wrote, "There is an inexplicable melancholy in the way light and dark interlace here. Like the past itself is etched into every shadow." He resolved to spend his first day exploring the town and its surroundings, determined to capture the phenomenon on film and perhaps uncover the origins of this enduring mystery. That afternoon, Gabriel set out on foot to document the anomaly. With his camera slung over his shoulder and a notebook clutched tightly in hand, he roamed the narrow cobblestone streets of Dustford. Every building, every lamppost, cast a shadow that extended far longer than the object itself. At first he thought it was a trick of the low winter sun, But as the day wore on, the shadows persisted even as the sun climbed higher in the sky. He paused in front of an old clock tower at the heart of town, its face weathered and its hands frozen in time. The shadow of the tower stretched across the square, dark and elongated, as if it were trying to touch the very edge of the horizon. Gabriel snapped photograph after photograph, each image capturing the eerie interplay between light and dark. He made careful notes. The shadow of the clock tower extends nearly twice its expected length. It's as though the darkness itself has an agenda, to reach out and smother the present with echoes of the past. A sense of both wonder and foreboding stirred within him. What secret could cause shadows to defy nature so? He wondered if perhaps the town's history held clues to this oddity. Determined to uncover the truth, Gabriel visited the town's modest library, a small building with creaking wooden floors and shelves filled with dusty tomes and yellowed newspapers. There he met Ms. Adelaide Turner, an elderly librarian with a gentle manner and eyes that twinkled with quiet wisdom. Over cups of lukewarm tea in a cramped back room, she recounted the lore of Dustford. Long ago, Ms. Turner explained softly, Dustford was founded by settlers who believed that darkness held power to remember and to heal. There is a legend of a great sorrow that befell our ancestors, a tragedy that left a permanent mark on the land. They say that on the day of the great loss, the shadows grew longer than the objects that cast them, as if they were trying to capture every last moment of despair. Ever since, the darkness in Dustford has been extended, a constant reminder that the past is never truly gone. Gabriel listened intently, scribbling notes as Ms. Turner described an ancient diary kept by one of the town's founders. The diary, she explained, spoke of a terrible calamity, a great fire or a devastating flood that had claimed many lives and left the survivors forever haunted by grief. It was believed that in their despair they had unwittingly cursed the land, causing the shadows to lengthen as if to reach back into the darkness of their lost world. With renewed determination, Gabriel resolved to track down this diary. He combed through local records, interviewed longtime residents, and scoured the dusty corners of the library. Each piece of evidence hinted at a deep-seated sorrow in Dustford's history, a sorrow so profound that it warped even the natural interplay of light and shadow. That evening, after a long day of research and reflection, Gabriel decided to venture beyond the town's limits. The long shadows, he thought, might be even more pronounced in the untamed wilderness that lay just beyond Dustford. With his camera and journal in hand, he walked the winding road into the surrounding forest, a place where ancient trees formed a cathedral of green, their branches intertwining high above, filtering the last rays of the setting sun. In the forest, the phenomenon grew even more surreal. The shadows of towering oaks and twisting vines stretched impossibly long, merging with the fading light in a dance of deep indigo and ebony. As he walked deeper into the woods, Gabriel felt a strange sensation, as if the forest itself were alive with memories. Every rustle of leaves, every subtle shift in the light, seemed to echo with voices from a time long past. He discovered a small clearing by a gently flowing stream, where the water itself appeared to carry reflections of another era. The shadows here, too, were unnaturally elongated, merging with the darkness of the underbrush. Gabriel set up his tripod and captured a series of long exposure photographs. As the shutter clicked, he noted in his journal, "The forest here is a living memory, every shadow a silent elegy for what has been lost. It's as if the trees are reaching out to grasp the remnants of ancient sorrows." The images he captured were hauntingly beautiful, a juxtaposition of natural splendor and eerie melancholy. The forest was alive with the echoes of the past, and its long shadows seemed to whisper secrets that only the brave could decipher. Back in Dustford, Gabriel's search for the ancient diary led him to a dilapidated mansion on the edge of town, once the home of one of the founding families. In a dusty attic, hidden under a stack of brittle books and faded linens, he uncovered a leather-bound journal with cracked, embossed lettering on its cover. The diary belonged to one Jonathan Blackwood, a man whose grief had been recorded in painstaking detail. Over several days, Gabriel pored over the fragile pages. Jonathan's entries recounted a series of tragedies: the loss of his beloved wife in a terrible accident, the destruction of his home in a raging inferno, and the subsequent dissolution of his family's hopes and dreams. The diary spoke of a night when, in a fit of despair, Jonathan had walked into the forest and stood beneath a blood-red moon. There, in his anguish, he had vowed that no light would ever fully dispel the darkness of sorrow. "Let the shadows grow long so that they may always remind us of what was lost," he had written. As Gabriel read these words, he felt an overwhelming sadness. The diary was a window into a heart broken by relentless grief, a grief so potent that it seemed to have seeped into the very fabric of the land, warping the natural balance of light and dark. He realized that the long shadows of Dusford were not merely an oddity of nature, but a living memorial to the collective sorrow of its people. Armed with his research and photographs, Gabriel began to document the stories of the town's inhabitants. He spoke with families whose ancestors had perished in the calamity, with elderly villagers whose eyes reflected decades of unspoken pain, and with local poets who found beauty in the melancholy of long shadows. Many recounted how, on certain days, the sun's rays would fail to dispel the extended silhouettes, leaving the town bathed in a perpetual, sorrowful dusk. One such resident, Mrs. Eleanor Fletcher, an octogenarian with a gentle, trembling voice, told him of a day when the shadows were so long that even the church bells seemed to toll in mourning. "We all felt it then," she said softly, as if the earth itself was weeping for the souls we had lost. Her words, laden with grief and reverence, echoed the sentiments that Gabriel had discovered in Jonathan Blackwood's diary. The more he listened, the more Gabriel realized that the long shadows were both a curse and a comfort. They were a constant reminder of the past's relentless grip, yet they also offered a kind of solace, a shared memory of collective loss that bound the community together in quiet resilience. One chilly winter's day, as Gabriel walked through the nearly deserted streets of Dusford, he noticed something even more unsettling. The shadows which normally followed the predictable paths of the sun now appeared to shift on their own accord. They seemed to stretch and contract, to linger in places where no object stood to cast them. At times, he swore he saw them moving against the natural direction of the light, as if propelled by an unseen force. That evening, as he set up his camera on a busy intersection near the town square, he captured a time-lapse sequence that revealed the phenomenon in eerie detail. In his recordings, the shadows of lampposts and buildings elongated far beyond their expected lengths, curling around corners and merging with one another in a slow, almost deliberate dance. Gabriel's pulse quickened as he realized that this was no simple optical illusion. Something in Dusford was distorting the very fabric of light. Determined to understand this force, he consulted with Dr. Marianne Lowe, a physicist from a nearby university known for her unconventional research into paranormal phenomena. Dr. Lowe explained that the phenomenon might be linked to a unique gravitational anomaly in the region, compounded by the emotional residue of centuries of collective sorrow. "It's as if the town's history is etched into the very light," she mused. "The shadows have become a canvas upon which grief and memory are projected." Though her scientific explanation was tentative, it provided Gabriel with a framework to explore the deeper, more mystical implications of the phenomenon. As autumn turned to winter, the intensity of the long shadows reached a fever pitch. The town held an annual memorial on the anniversary of the great calamity described in Jonathan Blackwood's diary, a day when the sun shone weakly and the shadows seemed to stretch for miles, mourning the lives lost. Gabriel attended the memorial with a heavy heart, his camera capturing the solemn expressions and the poignant interplay of light and shadow that defined the day. Inspired by the shared grief and the palpable power of the long shadows, the townspeople decided to perform a ritual of remembrance. In the town square, beneath the ancient oak that had witnessed countless generations, they gathered at noon, the time when the shadows were at their longest. They lit candles, recited prayers, and shared personal stories of loss and hope. In that moment, the shadows took on an almost tangible quality, enveloping the gathering in a deep, melancholic embrace. Gabriel recorded every detail, feeling that the ritual was a sacred act of collective healing, a way to honor the past while forging a path toward renewal. In the midst of this communal catharsis, an unexpected event shook the town. One morning, as the first light of dawn crept over Dustford, the long shadows receded suddenly, as if pulled back by an unseen hand. For a brief, disorienting moment, the town was bathed in a blinding clarity, a stark, unnerving contrast to the perpetual dusk that had defined it for so long. Then, as if nothing had happened, the shadows returned, longer and more somber than ever before. Gabriel felt an inexplicable chill. That day, the skies were overcast, and the air was heavy with anticipation and dread. Rumors spread like wildfire that the unseen force controlling the shadows had awakened, an ancient power tied to the town's deepest sorrows. Many believed that the spirits of the past, long confined to the realm of memory, were attempting to break free. In hushed tones, the townspeople spoke of strange apparitions seen wandering the edges of the forest and of eerie cries carried on the wind. Gabriel, whose heart now pounded with a mix of fear and fascination, realized that the phenomenon was reaching a climax, a moment when the forces of light and shadow would collide in a battle for the soul of Dustford. That fateful night, as the town lay shrouded in a thick, impenetrable fog, a celestial event graced the sky, a rare alignment of stars and a ghostly, silvery moon. The entire town gathered in the central square, their faces lit by flickering candlelight in the ghostly glow of the moon. In the hush of that eerie night, the long shadows seemed to come alive, stretching and twisting in unnatural patterns. The air vibrated with a silent energy, as if the very fabric of reality were on the verge of unraveling. Gabriel, standing at the center of the square, felt that this was the moment of reckoning. He recalled every story, every whispered legend, every piece of evidence that had led him to this point. With trembling hands, he raised his camera and began to record, capturing the surreal dance of the shadows as they intertwined with the collective grief of the town. Then, as if in response to the palpable tension, the long shadows converged upon the ancient oak at the square's edge. A deep, resonant sound, like the tolling of a distant bell, echoed through the air, a sound that seemed to call forth the spirits of the past. In that moment, the long shadows appeared to flicker and merge, revealing fleeting images of those lost to tragedy. Faces filled with sorrow and longing emerged from the darkness, only to vanish as quickly as they had appeared. For several agonizing minutes, time itself seemed to stand still. The townspeople, eyes wide with terror and wonder, held their collective breath. Then, as quickly as the phenomenon had begun, the shadows receded, leaving behind a profound silence and a sense of bittersweet release. The ancient oak stood illuminated in the pale light, its branches now free of the oppressive weight of extended darkness. In the days that followed, Dustford slowly began to heal. The long shadows, though still present, no longer loomed as oppressively as they once did. The celestial event had served as a catharsis, a moment of reckoning that allowed the town to confront its deepest sorrows and, in doing so, release some of the burden that had long haunted it. Gabriel continued his work, documenting the changes in Dustford with a mixture of scientific curiosity and heartfelt emotion. His articles and photographs, published in local papers and eventually shared with a wider audience, told the story of a town that had faced its own darkness, and emerged with a renewed sense of hope. People from neighboring regions came to visit Duskford, not to marvel at an unsolvable mystery, but to witness a community that had learned to embrace its past and transform its grief into beauty. Years later, as Duskford evolved into a town known for its resilience and the delicate interplay of light and shadow, the legend of the Long Shadows remained a poignant reminder of the fragile balance between memory and renewal. Gabriel's work became a cherished record of that tumultuous time, a legacy of art and truth that inspired future generations to seek beauty in even the darkest corners of existence. On quiet afternoons, when the sun shone softly and the shadows stretched in gentle arcs, the people of Duskford would often pause to reflect on their shared history. Children learned of the Long Shadows through stories passed down by their elders, and the once oppressive phenomenon was remembered not as a curse, but as a symbol of the town's enduring spirit, a legacy of sorrow transformed into hope. In every glimmer of light, every flicker of darkness, the town's soul lived on. The Long Shadows, though once unnaturally extended, now danced gracefully in the sun, a living testimony to the power of collective memory and the infinite capacity for healing. And as long as the sun rose over Duskford, its people would remember that even the longest shadows are cast by light, and that within every moment of despair lies the promise of a new beginning. Thus ends the chronicle of a town where shadows are longer than they should be, a tale of mystery, grief, and ultimately the transformative power of remembrance. For in the interplay between light and darkness, every soul finds its place, and every shadow, no matter how long, is a reminder that hope endures.